When looking at gender representation, it's beneficial to break into two distinct categories. As written in the Vox article, Hollywood's devastating gender divide explained. The first area entails what percentage of people on the screen and producing what's on screen happen to be women, whether that be female actresses, directors, producers, screenwriters. The second area is how these on-screen depictions of women are portrayed. December 28, 1895. On this date, in a nondescript basement room of a French cafe, the first ever public screening of 10 short films took place. The first of which was workers leaving the Lumiere factory in Lyon. The first instance of film as a medium is this short clip of female workers leaving their assembly line jobs making camera equipment at the Lumiere factory. Remarkable not only as a demonstration of groundbreaking technology, but a precursor to women's role in the burgeoning film industry. From this day in 1895 until 1906, women were relegated to the subjects of early films, or as uncredited workers tasked with menial labor like coloring film stock. The only exception being Alice Guy Blaché, who just so happened to be in the audience for the screening of workers leaving the Lumiere factory in Lyon. Blaché got her start working for inventor Leon Gaumont, who let her film short films to demonstrate the motion picture cameras his company produced. She leveraged this position to shoot hundreds of short films, including The Cabbage Fairy, arguably one of the first narrative films ever. But outside of the work of Blaché, women weren't truly welcome into the industry. That wasn't until the film industry finally found its footing in 1906. And now, a makeshift film industry finally emerges. And with it, a centralized way of presenting and monetizing films was created with Nickelodeons, which led to increased demand for more short films and in turn increased demand for workers. This rapid shift, according to director Dorothy Asner in a 1974 interview, meant it was possible for even inexperienced people to have an opportunity if they showed signs of ability or knowledge. It may have still been an uphill battle to break through, but this mad dash to meet demand meant a few women were finally able to make a name for themselves. Most notably was Mary Pickford, known as America's Sweetheart, who was not only a talented actress but also a savvy businesswoman. She was the first of many Hollywood starlets to use their newfound fame as leverage to get behind the camera, exemplified when she co-founded the studio United Artists with some of the biggest names in Hollywood, including future husband Douglas Fairbanks, Charlie Chaplin, and E.W. Griffith. For women of color, representation was near impossible to come by. The infamous 1915 blockbuster Birth of a Nation, built on the African-American stereotypes perpetuated in minstrel shows and sentimental Civil War era media, also featuring white actors in blackface. Author Barbara Teppo-Lupic states that the movie's crude and unfortunate racial imagery, especially of black women, exasperated contemporary racial fears and ethnic prejudices and helped to define the ways that African Americans were perceived. This new genre of race movies was born in an attempt to counter this negative imagery with realistic depictions of black Americans, portrayed by black actors. Evelyn Prieur was the race film genre's first lady of the screen, notable in films like Oscar Michaud's Within Our Gates from 1920. But the title of first colored film director was also achieved during this period, although the true first is academically contested. Some argue Tressie Souders of Kansas City was the first for a currently lost film, A Woman's Error, from 1922, based on a review from the Billboard magazine that refers to the film as the first of its kind to be produced by a young woman of our race. Others argue Maria P. Williams, who also happened to be from Kansas City, Missouri, was the first. Her 1923 film, The Flames of Wrath, was produced and distributed by Williams, who also acted in the lead role. LGBTQ plus women, in contrast to the aforementioned female trailblazers, had to actively repress and hide their identities to make it in the film industry. The excess and carnal desires of the 1920s allowed some queer representation to sneak into the public eye, such as the first ever same-sex kiss depicted in 1922's Manslaughter. But in general, there was a notable dissonance between the private lives of queer women and the work they presented publicly. Allusions to gay-coded behavior could be found in the pre-code work of noted bisexual actress Marlene Dietrich and the lesbian studio director Dorothy Asner. And then the golden age of Hollywood happened. Nothing quite exemplifies the decline in women in the film industry than this quote by Amanda Norris. Before Hollywood's golden age, the industry was fueled by independent filmmakers, and women participation was steadily increasing. From 1910 to 1920, according to Emerald's data, female actors comprised roughly 40% of casts. Women wrote 20% of movies, produced 12%, and directed 5%. By 1930, acting roles for women were cut in half, and producing and director roles hit close to zero. The author ties the sudden shift to two factors. The first is the rise of the studio system, which forced the film industry into a virtual monopoly in major studios with rigid structures and rules that push women out at every turn. According to Emerald, as the studio system falls under the control of a small group of men, women are receiving fewer and fewer jobs. The only women who managed to stay behind the camera were directors with connections or sheer luck. Until the 1970s, the only female directors in all of Hollywood were Dorothy Asner and Ida Lupino. The other factor was the Hays Code, a set of film standards enacted in 1934 that had a severe effect on the types of characters women could play on screen. The code included specific bans on any suggested nudity, scenes of childbirth, and sex hygiene of any kind. It also prevented any depictions of homosexuality or interracial relationships. In her book, Feminism in Pop Culture, Seal Studies, author Andy Zeiser writes characterizations of women in post-code films were indeed less brazen, less sexual, and far less powerful. These roles feature a notable shift from semi-autonomous individuals to simply objects of desire, as seen in the female damsel role of 1933's King Kong. It wasn't until the end of the Hays Code and the dissolution of the studio system in the 1960s that women once again had a chance to break into the film industry.